Okay. Hi everyone. Today we have Akila. So she'll be telling us about Galilean conformal electrodynamics. You can start. Hello, Akila.
Hello.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
start. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, there was a flight.
Oh,
Like,
I see. I see.
yeah, I couldn't hear. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, all. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to talk about my research work here. And the title of my talk is Uniqueness of Galilean Conformal Electrodynamics and its Dynamical Structure. And this is based on the arXiv 1909 11,993. Okay. The outline of my talk is here. First, I will give introduction to the Galilean theories, starting with the relativistic conformal symmetry. Then I talk about the Galilean conformal generators and the algebra. Then move to the Galilean electrodynamics, where we study the two sectors of electrodynamics based on the dominance of electric or magnetic part of the gauge fields. Then we develop equations of motion in those scenarios. Then once you're equipped with the equations of motion, the next question to be asked is the existence of action for such theories. We talk about the Helmholtz conditions, which are necessary and sufficient conditions for the existence of action. Then we further develop an algorithm to find out the action for theories if the equations of motions are provided. Okay, so using the algorithm, we develop action for the Galilean conformal electrodynamics, and then we study the dynamical structure of the theory. I end up the talk with a summary and future perspectives. Okay, let's start. These Galilean field theories are developed to understand the physics at low energies, where velocity is very small compared to that of light. Most of our day-to-day phenomena are based on Galilean physics. We can get the well-known space-time translations, Galilean space-time translations, by taking the C tending to infinity limit of Lorentz transformations. That is, when C tending to infinity, you will get the t prime equal to t limit and x prime equal to x minus vt from these equations. Then the main motivation to study the Galilean conformal field theories are the natural enhancement of symmetries, which can lead to the integrable field theories. We can see this in detail in the coming slides. Okay, let's have look at the conformal generators in relativistic theories first. Okay, consider the d plus 1 dimensional Minkowski spacetime. The Poincare generators are spacetime translations, rotations, and boosts. So these tildes represent the generators in relativistic scenario. Okay, so when you include a conformal symmetry, we include the extra generators of dilatation and special conformal transformation in addition to the Poincare. So dilatation generator is d tilde equal to minus t dot del t plus xi del I, and this k tilde mu. The special conformal transformation generators are minus 2x mu x dot del plus x dot x del mu. Let us see how to construct the Galilean conformal generators based on these conformal generators in relativistic case. These Galilean conformal symmetry generators are obtained by Innow-Wigner contraction of the above generators. And this contraction is done by taking the natural limits, that is c equal to 1, and the space-time scaling as xi going to epsilon xi and t going to t, where epsilon tending to 0. For an example, the boost generators, can be obtained from the relativistic case boost generator bi tilde equal to xi del t plus t del I. Here xi scale as epsilon xi and t as t itself, and del I will be 1 by epsilon del I. So as epsilon tending to 0, the first term vanishes, and the new boost generator in the Galilean case is bi, which is defined as limit epsilon tending to 0, epsilon times bi tilde is equal to t del I. So similarly, we can construct other generators in this limit and taking c equal to 1. So the Galilean generators are pi equal to del I, h equal to minus del t, jij equal to minus xi del j plus xt del I, bi equal to t del I, and dilatation d equal to minus x dot del plus, and this special conformal generators temporal part is k is equal to minus t square del t plus 2 xi t del I, and the spatial part of special conformal transformation generator t square del I. Okay, so we can organize these generators excluding this rotation generator in a suggestive form as Ln equal to minus t n plus 1 del t minus n plus 1 tn xi del I. Here n equal to minus 1 correspond to time translation generator, n equal to 0 correspond to dilatation, n equal to 1 correspond to k, that is temporal part of special conformal transformation, and min equal to tn plus 1 del I, where n equal to minus 1 correspond to space translation, 0 correspond to boost, 1 correspond to spatial part of the special conformal transformation. And these Lie brackets are here, like lm equal to n minus m, ln plus m, ln mim is equal to n minus m, min plus m as such, and mimj commutes and lnjij commutes. Jij mk will give you m j delta ik with antisymmetry in j and I. So if you count the dimension of the Lie algebra, you have h, d, k, one generator each, pi, bi, ki, d each. So 3 plus 3d here, and the jij one, jij will give you the antisymmetry. So that is half d into d minus 1. So total d plus 2 into d plus 3 by 2 dimensional Lie algebra. This finite Galilean conformal GeoGebra. Okay. Now these L's and Mi's transform in the scalar and fundamental vector representation of the rotation group SOD generated by Jij.
Akhila? Hello?
And this, hello?
I have a question. Can I ask that now? Okay.
Yeah.
So there is some subtlety with the mass being a central extension, right? When one does Inoni-Wigner contraction. So where would that go to in this algebra, in the ln m? I remember from Weinberg some because the Galilean algebra is realized projectively, right? So one does one introduces mass as a central extension. This commutator of k comma p is what? Can you go to the? Can you go to the previous slide? I just want to.
Yeah, k comma p will come from here. So k is L1 and p here.
I see.
Yes. Where n equal to 1 and m also equal to 1.
Okay,
so that is 0 here.
I see. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah. It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I think mass gets added there when there is a central extension. I was just wondering where it would come. It would come here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this algebraic structure closes for all integer values of n and m, not only for 0, plus, minus 1. So this embeds a finite GCA into infinite dimensional one. This is the enhancement of symmetries happening here. So this will lead to the integrable theories. Okay. Now we can, as an example, we can study the Galilean electrodynamics case. So Galilean electrodynamics was developed in 1973 by Leblanc and Lévy-Leblond. And in past years, Galilean electrodynamics was much explored in 4 dimensions. But this conformal part of these Galilean theories was started to study recently only. So in the case of relativistic conformal theories, we see that there is only a single limit where only space-time scaling is there. But here, there are 2 different limits called electric and magnetic limits, depending on dominance of electric or magnetic effects. So the limits are expressed in terms of the scalings of space-time coordinates as well as the scaling of the gauge field components. We can see it in detail here. So this is a tale of 2 limits. So the electric limit is where this electric effect dominates. That means temporal part of the gauge field dominates here. That is AT going to AT and AI going to epsilon AI, where epsilon tending to 0, as well as the space-time scaling is already there. And the magnetic limit is AT going to epsilon AT, and the magnetic part of the gauge field dominates here, AI going to AI. And we can construct the equation of motion here from the relativistic case. So the relativistic equation of motion is given by del mu f mu nu equal to 0, where f mu nu is del mu a nu minus del nu a mu. So we can split the equation of motion into temporal and spatial part. So first equation of motion for AT is del j AT plus del j del t aj equal to 0. And the equation of motion for AI is minus del t AI plus del I del t AT plus del j AI minus del j del I AI equal to 0. And I'll give you an example for the construction of equation of motion for the AI in the electric limit. Okay, so the relativistic case equation of motion for AI field is minus del t AI plus del I del t AT plus del j AI minus del j del I AI equal to 0. So when you allow the scaling here, here del t remains as such. AI will be epsilon AI and del I will be 1 by epsilon del I. AT remains as such. And here del I del j here 1 by epsilon square, and here AI is epsilon AI. So total 1 by epsilon. Similarly here total 1 by epsilon equal to 0. And here we get the new equation of motion as limit epsilon tending to 0, epsilon times ta tilde. That is nothing but these 3 dominant terms, del j ai minus del I del j aj plus del t at equal to 0. Similarly, we can construct other equations of motion in both electric and magnetic cases. So these are the ones. Electric case, equation of motion for AT is del I AT equal to 0, and equation of motion for AI is del j AI minus del I del j aj plus del t del I at equal to 0, and the magnetic limit equation of motion for AT is del I del t AI plus del j at equal to 0, and for AI field equation of motion is del j AI minus del I del j aj equal to 0. So the immediate question arises is, given the set of equations of motion, can we construct an action from these set of equations? So these study of construction of an action from the equation of motion, known as the inverse problem of calculus of variation, has been studied in mathematics literature already. And there is a necessary and sufficient condition for the existence of action. These are known as the Helmholtz conditions. Let's see the details of the Helmholtz condition. Okay, so constraint theory described in terms of the fields UB, where this B running from 1 to n depend on the number of fields, and their equation of motion be TAs, and S of UBB action integral. Action
Yes, sorry, I have a naive question. Can I ask that?
Okay. Yes.
So since you are considering this Helmholtz conditions, I mean, let me just ask that what happens if we directly take the Galilean limit of the relativistic Maxwell's action? I mean, does something go wrong, or I mean, because you're asking this question, I mean, does this not lead to an action whose equations of motions are the one that you showed in previous slide?
It's not leading to like. So
yeah, so okay, can you just elaborate on what exactly is the problem? I think I missed that.
Okay, so okay, so okay, actually, you once you take the Galilean limit from the Lorentz, I mean relativistic action, you are not able to get any action which is invariant under this GCA as well as Helmholtz conditions.
No, I mean, Helmholtz conditions, suppose I don't know them. I mean, I am given a relativistic action and I'm just taking a limit, which is the Galilean limit. And my question is that, I mean, that limit, either somehow it gives a nonsensical answer, that somehow that limit gives to a singular behavior, or that limit goes to somewhere. So, I mean, which case is that?
Actually, I forgot about that. When we were doing this, we have done that, taking that limit also, but it didn't result.
Okay, that's okay, that's fine.
Maybe I can talk to you later about this.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so the action functional S of UB is integral dn of x, and this Lagrangian of UB, UAC, UABD, and XA, and where this UAA and UABA are the first and second order derivatives of UA. And in order to get an action from the equation of motion, these conditions should be satisfied. These are okay. The first Helmholtz condition is del TA by del of UABB equal to del TB by del UABA, and del TA by del UAB plus del TB by del UAA equal to 2 times del B of del TB by del UBAA, and del TA by del UB equal to del TB by del of UA, and del A of del TB by del UAA plus del A del B del TB by del UABA. These are the set of Helmholtz conditions. Now let us check the Galilean electrodynamics case, whether an action exists or not using this Helmholtz.
Sorry, another simple question. These fields UA or UB, these are only the physical fields, or can they also be auxiliary fields?
So It can be any fields. Yes, it can be auxiliary fields also.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes. And let us check the existence of action for Galilean electrodynamics. First, we can check the existence of action for magnetic sector. We have already equations of motion as T0 equal to del I del T AI plus del J AT equal to 0. And Ti is del J AI minus del I del J AJ equal to 0. And here, this equation of motion for AT and this equation of motion for AI. Okay, so del T naught by del AI of AB. AB is derivative of AI. So here only one term is there containing derivative of AI, that is with A equal to I and B equal to T. So you get is equal to 1. And here there are no terms containing the derivative of AT. So del Ti by del A of AB equal to 0 for all A and B. So this implies the first Helmholtz condition, del Ta by del UAB equal to del TB by del UAB of A is violated here. So this implies there is no action corresponding to these equations of motion. And when you check the electric sector, similarly here the equation of motion are del I AT equal to 0 for the AT and Ti equal to del J AI minus del I del J AI plus del T del I AT equal to 0. And here when you differentiating with respect to derivatives of AI, this T naught, then you get 0 for every A and B. And if you differentiate Ti with respect to derivatives of A, here only one term is there. So that is equal to 1 for A equal to T and B equal to I. So here also the first Helmholtz condition is violated. So no action exists. So to proceed further, we have developed an algorithm. Okay, let's see that algorithm. So the step 1 is first, if you have an equation of if you have a set of equation of motion in hand, first you've passed the equations of motion through the Helmholtz criteria. If they satisfy the criteria, we go down to step 4. So step 4 is nothing but this equation of motion should possess the Galilean conformal symmetry. So this is done by checking whether the equation of motion still continue to hold with infinitesimally transformed field variables phi. For an example, if the equation of motion is D'Alembert phi equal to J, then if D'Alembert del star phi equal to 0, you are getting on shell, then the equation of motion is said to be invariant under the symmetry generated by star element of GCA. Okay. If the equation of motion are not satisfying Helmholtz condition first itself, then you have to go to the step 2. Here, this step is for adding extra fields to the system such a way that these fields should be having a well-defined GCA transformation rules, as well as after the addition of these fields in the system, the equation of motion, the modified equation of motion should satisfy the Helmholtz criteria. Then you go to the step 3, where, okay, this step is basically, you should get back the original Galilean electrodynamics equations of motion or whatever equations of motion. If you switch off the fields to 0, I mean extra added fields to 0. And then further step 4, the same, checking the invariance under the Galilean conformal symmetry. Okay, using this algorithm.
The voice, sorry, the voice broke for me while you were reading point 2. Was it just me or?
Why?
No, I mean, it might have just have been my internet connection. I'm just checking.
Yeah, I think it is HLA connection.
It was fine on my end. I heard.
Okay. Then I think it was our connection. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So let us construct the action for the Galilean electrodynamics. first using this above algorithm. So first we can construct try to construct the action for magnetic sector. So step 1 we have already done and failed to hold the Helmholtz conditions. So we are adding extra scalar field B to the system, and then we consider the general set of equations of motion. Then we didn't add any interactions terms. So all the second order derivative terms only we have considered. So basically we are trying to find the relation between these coefficients and trying to eliminate these coefficients to get back to a final form of the equations of motion, which is invariant under GCA. That is our main goal. So okay, if you undergo Helmholtz check of these equations of motion, okay, first equation of motion del T naught by del B AB. So it's equal to C1 for AB equal to JJ, and C2 for AB equal to TT, and similarly del TB by del AAB, these two terms, it's equal to A4 for AB equal to T, and A5 for AB equal to J. In order to satisfy the Helmholtz condition, del T naught by del BAB should be equal to del TB by del AAB. This implies C1 equal to A5 and C2 equal to A4. Similarly, from other relations, we'll get B1 equal to A3 and C3 equal to B5. So after using these relations, we get the equations of motion as T0 equal to A1 times del J A plus A3 del J del T AJ plus A2 del T A plus A5 del J B plus A4 del T B equal to 0. Similarly others. Okay, now we go to step.
Akhila, one clarification. So earlier you showed that the Helmholtz conditions are not satisfied, and hence one cannot construct action, something like that, right? Now, when you
Sorry,
you are
I'm not
satisfying the
able to-
Helmholtz conditions.
Hello, can you talk little loudly? I'm not able to. Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so here when you are showing these Helmholtz condition
Huh.
and trying to, so I'm just trying to understand what is the goal here. So you are constructing T's out by satisfying the Helmholtz condition, because earlier you showed that Helmholtz conditions were not satisfied, right?
Yes.
So like so when in this slide when you write down the equalities, what does that mean, that they are satisfied or not?
Yeah. Actually, when you add extra fields to the system and add terms corresponding to that field in the equations of motion, and then so we have considered the most general equations of motion with different coefficients.
Yes.
Then in order to like invariant under those Helmholtz conditions, we get certain relation among the parameters. So these equations of motion are this is valid under Helmholtz check.
Okay. And so A, B, C, all those are extra fields, or I mean.
Okay.
Yeah. So
This
what are the extra
A
fields here?
and AI are already there, and this B is the one we have added to AT and AI.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Only one scalar field we have added.
Okay. And now still they follow from Galilean algebra, or the Galilean limit
that comes next. So we got this much, and then next step is once we switch off this B's from this equation of motion, we should get back to our original equations of motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so when you switch off this thing, we should get back to the original. So this requires this relation among the parameters. That's B2 equal to minus B3, B5 equal to minus A5, and all others are 0. Because our T naught in the magnetic sector is only del I del T AI and del J AT. And Ti is del J AI minus del I del J AI AJ. So all other terms with A's should vanish. That means the coefficient should be vanishing. So that is why these A1, A2, A3, A4, and B4 should vanish. Then we will get back, we get these equations of motion. A5 del J B equal to 0. And Ti equal to B2 del J AI minus B2 del I del J AJ minus A5 del I del T B equal to 0. And TB equal to C4 del J B plus C5 del T B plus A5 del J A minus A5 del T AJ equal to 0. And then the step 4, we check the invariance under Galilean conformal transformation. So this is by using the variation of fields or transformation of fields under Ln and Min. So here A and AI is already there, and B we have included here. The B is a scalar, so same scalar transformation rule can be applied here. And this B, B prime, A prime, all are parameter arbitrary constants. So again, we will get back to certain relation among these parameters. A5 equal to minus A prime B2, B prime equal to 0 equal to A, delta equal to D minus 2, delta equal to 1, C5 equal to A prime A5, B equal to minus 1. So this delta equal to 1 implies here D equal to 3 only possible. And all other parameters, A, B, A prime, and B prime, everything can be, so these we can include using the other relationship with the A prime. So only A prime remains there. So we can take A prime equal to 1 also in this. This is the final form of the equations of motion. And this is invariant under the action of Min and L minus 1, L0, L1. Okay, so the action we can obtain from here is 1/4 integral d3x dt del tb plus 2 del ja del jb minus half fij minus 2 del ib del tai del ta. Okay, where fij is del iaj minus del jai. This is about the action. And then we tried for this electric sector also, but we couldn't find an
Akhila?
action. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, before you move on, if I had added not this scalar B, but scalar which is massless, massive, then would something have gone wrong? I mean, this wouldn't have worked or something. I mean, I'm just trying. Okay, let me put it this way: why have you considered a massless scalar and not a scalar with massive term?
Okay, so we didn't include the interaction terms here. I mean, the equation of
no,
motion,
not interactions, just the mass term. Interaction, I understand. You want to
mass
keep
term also like this Helmholtz, like then also this equation we considered only equation of motion of second order derivatives terms.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, mass term will be just
simplicity.
polynomial, right? I mean, there will be no derivative. It's just b square kind of term, right?
Okay.
So that.
Yeah.
I'm just asking that why. I mean, would something have gone wrong if we had considered that?
Actually, can I answer something?
Yeah,
I guess this is the most simplest case one can think of. I mean, adding a scalar field or a mass. I mean, adding a massless scalar field. I think that ought to be the the situation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my question is that, I mean, is it for simplicity or like whether conceptually something would have not worked out?
I'll try to add to that question. So this is Galilean conformal invariance, right? So
yes.
So is the conformal invariance broken if you add a mass? I mean, I don't know if that is the like the way to think about it. But is there something like that? Because in relativistic conformal theories, we can't have a massive field, right? Because it would break scale invariance.
Yeah, I think then, I mean, basically the final step might not have worked out, but I mean, this Helmholtz
Yeah.
condition, one might still have been able to.
Right. Yeah, maybe, yeah, right.
What would have happened is that finally, whatever action is there, they might not have been invariant under,
GCA.
I think I forgot which one was scaling.
Or the GCA, or the GCA invariants, like how they set other things to 0, it would probably set, M to 0.
Yeah, that's also possible.
Yeah, right. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Now, regarding the electric sector, undergoing this algorithm indicated that you will not get any action for the electric sector if additional scalar or vector fields are included in the theory. And for next, we can consider the dynamical structure of the action we have constructed in the magnetic case. So the Lagrangian is given as this 1/4 b dot square plus half del I b minus 1/8 Fij minus 1/2 ai dot del I b, and the equation of motion are, as we saw earlier, the same thing. And this Lagrangian enjoys the following gauge invariance: del I equal to del T alpha 1, del ai equal to del A alpha 2, del alpha b equal to 0, and this alpha 1 and alpha 2 are related by del I del T alpha 1 minus alpha 2 equal to 0. And then we tried for this constraint analysis. So
you also have shift symmetry for the B field, right? Because only derivatives of B appears. I think B going to B plus something constant will keep the action unchanged.
And then constraint analysis. So primary constraint C1 pi a and C2 is pi a plus half del IB, and the Hamiltonian can be expressed in terms of this Lagrangian multipliers U1 and U2I times these constraints. And then we move on to find out further constraints. So these are the secondary constraints. It's by calculating the Poisson bracket with the Hamiltonian. So minus half del square b is C3, and 1/2 del k fki plus del I pi b is the C4. And then further we proceeded to find more constraints. Then we got C3 with h, we got the minus del square pi b. But here you can see that del dot C4 is equal to del square pi b. It's equal to del I del k fki. So f is antisymmetric in k and I, and del I del k is symmetric in k and I. So this term vanishes. So there is nothing new in this. So this we can obtain from the previous constraint itself. And here another constraint we got is this, but here this is an equation of motion, equation for this U2I, where U2I equal to del I times A. So there are no further constraints. So we got 4 constraints. Now let's see about the first class constraint and second class constraints. So when we try to see whether these constraints are first class or second class, we smeared them with appropriate vector or scalar test functions lambda, and we made the definition of C3 of lambda as minus half ddx lambda del square b. Using the constraint C2 as this here, C2, we can write this is equal to lambda del I pi I. And yeah, so finally the C1 and C3, their bracket vanishes, and C2, C4 bracket results in this. So there are two first class constraints, C1 and C3, and second class constraints are C2 and C4. And when you count the dimension of the system, so physical phase space dimension, we have three fields. So two scalar fields, A and B, and then one vector field AI. So 2 plus D, and corresponding moment as. So 2 into 2 plus D total dimension. And for each first class constraints, 2 degrees of freedom will be removed. So 2 into 2 minus number of second class constraints. This C2 and C4 having 2 D degrees of freedom, so minus 2D equal to 0 per space-time point. So this makes it a topological field theory. And then summary of the talk.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Is there a simpler way of seeing that why this should be a topological field theory? I mean, for example, like, is there maybe a simple choice of gauge which will help us see that all the A, AIs and B gets gauge fixed to something? Or I'm just asking if there is a simple gauge choice which, because I mean, looking at the action, I think I would have never guessed that this is a topological field theory.
Okay, 1 minute. So
I think we can discuss this later.
maybe you can. Okay. Yes, the summary is, first we have constructed an algorithm to construct an action from the equation of motion of a theory if there exists an action. And using this procedure, we have obtained a unique action for magnetic sector of Galilean electrodynamics by adding an extra scalar field to the theory. And so we have found that the infinite dimensional group of global Galilean conformal symmetry enjoyed by the equation of motion gets broken due to the inclusion of new scalar field. That is, instead of Ln taking all values of n, only -1, 0, +1 are possible for Ln case. Still MIN holds. So however, the symmetry algebra still remains an infinite dimensional subalgebra of the Galilean conformal algebra. This corresponds to MIN symmetry. And we also show that it's not possible to obtain action for the electric sector of the Galilean electrodynamics, even if I add extra scalar or extra vector field to the system. And then we use the action obtained in the magnetic limit to study the dynamical structure of the system in question. That is magnetic limit of Galilean electrodynamics. Then a Dirac constraint analysis shows that the non-existence of propagating degrees of freedom in the system. And the future perspectives are, we have done classical studies here. So if it will be interesting to do the quantization of the fields and study those things. And another thing is, in the supersymmetric scenario, the study of infinite dimensional Galilean conformal transformations, both in the classical as well as quantum level. And it will be interesting to study the breaking of supersymmetry in such cases. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I was just going to say, let's just thank Khila for the great talk. Yeah. Now people can ask questions. Yeah, Subranit. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that. I mean, if this is a topological field theory, I mean, is it a topological field theory of what is called a Schwartz type or a Witten type? I mean, in the sense that is the action completely independent of the background metric, that kind of topological field theory, or is it like it depends on the background metric, but then the cohomology doesn't depend on the metric?
Actually, I don't know about that. When we did this constraint analysis and all these things, we ended up in a topological theory. Like,
Yeah, that is clear. I mean, if you
Yeah.
do Dirac constraint analysis and you have physical phase space dimension 0,
yeah,
that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to see that. I mean, okay, so when you know already that this is a topological field theory,
uh-huh.
I mean, can you try to rewrite the action in terms of some topological invariance, the integral? If you can, then that would be a Schwartz type. If you cannot, then that would be a Witten type theory. That's what I was trying to get at. And what is interesting is this: I don't know much about topological field theories in this non-relativistic setting.
Uh-huh.
So, and because your action didn't obviously look like a topological field theory to me, that's why I was curious. That maybe this is something to think about.
Okay.
Subramanian?
Yeah.
So I mean, I just wanted to ask. So what is Chern-Simons theory in that language? Because the Lagrangian has no metric, right? So like, how would you?
Yeah, that's a Schwartz type. So
I
it
see.
doesn't depend on the metric at all.
Okay. Because
On-
here
on the
also
other hand,
there is no metric, right? So far.
yeah, but I mean it's I mean it could be implicit. I mean because there
Okay.
might be hidden contraction with this delta ij part. I don't know.
I see. Okay. I see. Okay, so you want to okay, by metric you mean like even if it's in flat space, whether to write it,
Yeah.
how did you construct the top form? That is what you're interested
Yeah,
in.
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean another way to cast this would be that if it's a Schwartz type, then the integral should be rewritten in terms of some topological invariant. I mean it will be explicitly topological with some clever way of choosing variables or something. On the
Okay,
Witten type, what happens is that you will never be able to write it as topological invariant, but then the BRST cohomology will be independent of the background metric. So while the action cannot be written in a background metric independent way, but the dynamics is background independent. So you say that it's a topological field theory. So one example of that would be the string wall sheet case, for example.
So you're saying Chern-Simons theory is Schwartz type, but like if I write like 3D Chern-Simons action, there is no metric there, right? So
right. So it's so I mean from the action itself, it is obvious that it's topological.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But for example, the wall sheet string theory, there is a wall sheet metric in the Polyakov action. So you might have said that, oh, this is not topological in the wall sheet sense. But then you compute the BRST cohomology and you see that the wall sheet metric never enters.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, are there other
can I ask something? Yeah. So you people were discussing about, I mean, whether the theory is written on does it have a metric or something? So I think, I mean, we are talking about Galilean theories. So clearly the theory has like a spatial metric, the Galilean metric. So does it make it like Witten type or something? Like, I don't know, because there exists a geometric interpretation to this.
Sorry, what's the geometric interpretation?
I mean, like we do have a manifold. Over which this theory is written. It's a Galilean manifold, no? So
that is perfectly fine. But I mean, it may turn out that even if you start off with trying to write a theory on a manifold with a metric, you end up writing an action which doesn't depend on the metric at all.
Okay.
I mean, even if your manifold has a metric in it, you just have written down an action which doesn't use the metric, which is perfectly fine. So
okay.
So that is a possibility. I mean, the point is that written in this component language, I don't know how to see it obviously. So there has to be some way of nicely rewriting this action that would make this distinction much more clearer.
Okay.
This regarding the mass term you were talking, no, m square b square term in the Lagrangian.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. It was turned out that it was not invariant under GCA.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And only
that makes
these terms
sense. Yeah.
like b to the 4,
Mhm.
it was invariant.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. That would. That would work with what we know from relativistic CFTs also. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay.
So
Okay.
you looked at the Galilean limit in this case. Have you guys looked at like the other one, the Carolean limit of electrodynamics?
Hello.
Could you hear me?
Can you repeat?
Yeah, I was asking if you have looked at the Carolean conformal limit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Actually, we have done. Okay, we have done for Carolean case also. The same procedure we have done, and we have included. So there were no action for the magnetic case of Carolean electrodynamics also. So we have included extra fields, 2 fields, scalar field and vector field, and then we obtained the action.
So there, do you get topological theory or like some degrees of freedom up there?
It was not a topological theory.
Okay. Nice. Thanks.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Yeah, can I ask one more?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably a bit too simplistic, but I mean, physically, what does Galilean electrodynamics mean? I mean, in the sense that if I have just pure electrodynamics, then I mean, the electromagnetic waves is always traveling at the speed of light. I mean, then taking the Galilean limit, I mean, I understand mathematically the limit is well defined and everything, but physically, like what is happening? I mean, physically, what should we expect? What kind of physics should this capture of the electrodynamics? Sorry, I can't hear anything. Am I audible?
Actually, I was thinking what to.
Oh, sorry. I
Yeah.
thought I got disconnected. Sorry.
No. Maybe I'll think of it. I don't.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I was just, I mean, you get my like concern. I mean, in the sense that, I mean, if the theory, everything is moving already always on the speed of light. I mean, even after addition of the scalar, which was a massless scalar, so that also moves at the speed of light. So, I mean, I guess that is kind of inevitable if you want to have some form of conformal symmetry. Then, what kind of physical setup I would expect this sort of thing to play a role in? I mean, of course, as a mathematical curiosity, or I mean, defining of the limit, everything is perfectly fine. I mean, it's a perfectly well defined limit and everything. I'm just trying to understand that physically, what kind of situation where this might be helpful or useful in some sense. But that's okay. I mean, I think we can discuss this later.
Okay. Are there more questions? Okay. If not, let's thank Akila again. Yeah, thanks a lot, Nikhila. So I'll
Okay.
stop recording.
Okay.